someone we've both admired for years, and we are so thrilled to introduce her to you all, Nedra Glover Tawwab. You may recognize Nedra's name from her incredible Instagram account that we often repost. She is a licensed therapist, relationship expert, and the author of the New York Times bestseller, Drama Free and Set Boundaries, Find Peace. She also hosts the fabulous new podcast, You Need to Hear This. Welcome to ShrinkChicks, Nedra. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
And we were just saying before this, we saw Nedra at the Psychotherapy Networker, and it was such an incredible presentation. You're so amazing when you speak, and we are just pumped to be able to ask you our listener questions and get into it.
Yes, let's go.
Well, I have to, did you realize that you were going to end up as the boundaries guru for many people? Most of us don't set off in this careers, and people are obsessed with boundaries, and you're so good at explaining them.
I don't think anyone really realizes. You can hope, right? But you don't realize what the end of something would look like. You think about like Whitney Houston. She just wanted to sing. She didn't know she would be like on t-shirts today. It's like, hey, it's 1983. I just want to sing a song in front of people.
Yes.
I just want to talk about boundaries. And, here we are.
Can I ask you, did you gravitate towards boundaries in your work? Like before you've gotten, this huge following, were you always gravitating towards boundaries? Because, we always talk about that as therapists. You kind of gravitate towards specific things in your work.
Yes, but without the title of boundaries, right? I know when my clients are following me on social media because they'll start using the word boundaries, and I'm like, we don't talk about boundaries. It looks like so many things. I certainly speak with my clients about their family relationships, their romantic relationships, and we talk about how can you state that need to someone? How can you, maybe advocate for yourself at work? So we talk about those things, and we've always talked about those things, but I don't necessarily use that word boundaries. Now I'm starting to use it a lot more, of course, because I'm more known for it, but I feel like the work has been focused on that without actually bringing that word into the conversation. Just like, I don't necessarily use bipolar disorder as I'm talking to my clients, or oppositional defiant, or, like those sort of things, even though that's what we're working on. I don't think the label is always as important as the behavior, what needs to be said, or an action, or, how it's impacting your life. But in terms of writing a book, it has to have a title.
Yes.
Yeah, they kind of make you do that, right? Like
it's
they
wild.
make you have
it's really weird.
Yeah, that coming to the title piece of it is tough. I'm like, like, what do you want to title the book? The book.
Right.
I'm like,
the only book.
Title. Yeah, the only book you'll need.
Right.
I like that as a title. So.
Okay, we were also just talking about the name of your podcast. You
Great name.
Need to Hear This, and like what a genius name that is.
Yeah, I feel like that came from social media because you ever see where people will post like, I don't know who needs to hear this.
Yes.
I sometimes think it's me or it's you who needs to hear this, right? And so I come up with this idea of, I think you need to hear this is a very direct way to say that it is for you. It's not like, I don't know. It's like, oh, I know who needs to hear it. It's you.
and that is like kind of encapsulates your whole approach, is how direct you are. And in listening to your book and how you frame boundaries and you talk about boundaries. It's so incredible. It's so direct. It's to the point. You're not beating around the bush at all. And so I just think it's so helpful, for readers, for listeners to hear specific examples, and the way in which you explain your examples in your book is just so incredible and helpful for us as therapists, honestly.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because we can't necessarily speak as directly to our clients. So I love having the social media space, the book writing space, the newsletter space, the podcast space to be more direct, because with my clients, I hear it. I'm like, oh, girl, this is going to be a problem. What are you thinking about doing?
Yes,
It's like,
yes.
But on You Need to Hear This, I could say, girl, don't do that.
Right.
Say it directly. Well,
Yes.
I think that there's something amazing. I think that that's one of the problems that happens, right? You come out of grad school and they teach you to be a certain way. And then you're like, oh, but there's like confliction of who we are as people. Right. And like that confliction of bringing ourselves into the room. But a lot of us are pretty direct people in our lives.
As a therapist, I've learned to be direct in a witty sort of way. A lot of, a lot of my clients are like, laughing because I'll just, I may say like, oh my gosh, this sounds so familiar. When did you do this? Oh, 2022, August. Let's talk about August 2022. So, or whatever, and they're like, oh, here you go. You're bringing up. I'm like, oh, but it sounds like the same thing. So I'm being direct, but I'm not saying, hey, don't do this. I'm highlighting a pattern that I've seen in your behavior. I am noticing how you respond to people. So I may say something like, oh, every time you talk about them, you get a little high pitched. It's like you're almost about to sing, but you don't. Words come out. Why do you think that happens when you mention this person's name?
Well, and it goes with an ongoing idea of the non-pathologizing angle, which you really come from, which is like, I'm really going to connect with you and I'm going to point this out, but I'm going to tell you and you can do whatever you want with it because I don't go home with you.
Yeah. And you know what? I try to create a space where not only do I not go home with you, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. I'm not your sister. I'm not your mother. I'm not your friend. I'm not your coworker. You come to this space to be heard, for me to listen to you and to help you with your life. You're here to receive help. I don't need to spank you on the hand. I don't need to yell at you. I don't need to tell you how terrible you are. You're here to get help. So if you tell me, and sometimes people will say like, oh my gosh, I've done a bad thing. And I'm like, girl, or guy, what did you do? And they say what the bad thing is. And I'm like, oh, okay. It sounds like you feel bad about doing a bad thing. So I don't even think I need to really hammer in, you're doing a bad thing. It's like, am I here to roast you? No, I am here to help you. Let's talk about why you engaged in this action. Let's talk about, how you are trying to speak more directly, but here you are, you've cussed someone out, right? Let's talk about how that might have happened this time.
Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me directly in this moment?
Feel personal.
This feels a little bit personal, but okay.
Yeah, when people, it feels better to absorb it and to help people when they're in the space of getting help. Now, in a personal life, it's like, I'm not a therapist. This is my reaction is going to be a lot different because you're not in a helping space. You're at Thanksgiving. So this is a little different. But when someone is in a space to receive help, I feel like my primary job is to facilitate that.
Well, I love something you really spoke about the network, which I think was really helpful for so many of the clinicians to hear was there's weeks that people are going to come in and they're just going to vent, and it's still our job to just hear that. It is still our job to show up at that time and to come and to hear and hold space wherever they are. And there was this like collective sigh of relief in the room when you talked about that you could see people like their faces sort of came down a little bit and their bodies relaxed a little bit because I think we feel this pressure. And sometimes people just want to show up and they want to talk about some shit and get it out. And
Hmm.
what's so wrong with that?
Yeah, we want people to make progress. There are these treatment methods. I think they became pretty popular when I graduated college. I graduated 2007. And I remember there was a high focus on solution focused and rapid such and such therapy and, all of this quick 6 week, 4 week, 8 weeks.
Mhm.
It's insurance driven.
Yeah.
Yes.
People don't want to, and I get it. If I was, if I had to pay for somebody to go to therapy, I would be on them every week. What did you learn? What did you do?
Yes.
I don't want you in there too long. But a lot of the folks coming to us, they have deep-seated issues. They may be coming for an issue with not knowing how to date properly, right? How to pick a person and have a healthy relationship. But that comes from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So I can sit there and focus on, okay, these are all the things you need to do. Go home and do these 8 things and then come, we could do that for 4 weeks and be done. However, why is this an issue for you? Why are you not seeing the love and care that's available in a partner? How are you showing up in dating situations? What things are you, like all of that stuff, that's going to take more than 4 weeks. We only get 53 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
I'm not doing intensives here.
Yeah.
It's going to take more than 4 weeks for me to talk about this person from 8th grade who did this thing to you, or your dad and your mom, or your siblings, or this college, partner that you had, or this, it's going to take a little bit of time. Now, in terms of tools, I think, yeah, I can give you tools, but we have to talk about why you haven't been applying them, because some of the tools are going to sound familiar. I'm not a magician here. I'm going to be telling you some stuff you've seen on TV, you've read it before. So now we have to talk about, okay, so you knew this thing, you weren't applying it, why? So it's so much to that. And then you have some clients, I've had clients who are serious about their stuff and they will finish in 6 weeks because they are like,
Yes.
I want to be out of here.
Yes.
But there is nothing wrong with a person who wants to treat therapy as a lifestyle practice. I'm one of those folks. Some weeks I don't have nothing to talk about. I just go to therapy and I'm like, girl, have you started watching Dave? I've started watching Dave, and it's my money. Talk about what talk about.
Absolutely. We do the same thing, by the way.
Yes. Last week, I have a flip chart coming out with Passy. I was showing my therapist my flip chart page by page. Look, and this is the next page. Oh my God. It's my money.
Right.
Yep.
I'm proud of myself. Proud of myself. Look what was created from this book about boundaries. Now I have, these other things that are entering the world. So I want to share that. That's me too. I don't want to only go when I've had a bad week and I'm like, oh my gosh, so-and-so died. Like I don't want every session to be about that. I want some sessions to be about, how wonderful of a time I had on book tour, or how this amazing thing is happening. And then sometimes I go there and I'm just venting about the same thing I've talked about 5,000 times. It's your time and you get to use it however you want to. Now, if somebody or some other resource is, like an EAP. Now, EAP, they'll say 6 sessions.
Yes.
6 sessions.
You're out.
You better get to it.
Yeah.
You better use your time wisely.
Yeah.
But if you want to extend even beyond that, You can go through your insurance, you can pay out of pocket, you can use a resource like Open Path and find somebody within your budget. There are so many options, but your healing is not time limited.
So, well, you talked about something really amazing, which I think pulls us into listener questions, is that there's sometimes we know that something could be more helpful for us, and it's still really hard for us to do it, right? And so we think that brings us to the conversation of, we'll use the word boundaries. Let's say I know I got to say to my mom, no, you can't come over every day when I just moved in with my partner, right? But it's pretty darn hard for me to say that to my mom. And so if we start off with the listener questions, this question we get asked all the time, which is, how can you set a boundary without coming off as selfish? Because we have so many people that is their fear. This makes me selfish for saying this.
Perhaps it does. Are you able to have a bit of selfishness as a human? Absolutely. Yeah, there's extreme selfishness, whereas you're stepping on the heads of others, you're taking resources from people, you're doing things that might be vindictive, or you might be entitled in other people's lives. And then there is some healthy selfishness that we have to really get comfortable with having in our relationship, where we ask for our needs and we make these declarations. There can be people who are very uncomfortable with that, because so many of us are taught that we have to give. We have to reduce ourselves to be in relationships. We shouldn't speak up because it's unkind. And what happens? We start having headaches. We got acid reflux. We got heartburn. We got migraines, heart disease, and all sort of stuff, because we're out here, trying to be in these relationships and we're not really comfortable in them. Not really comfortable. So there is a healthy level of selfishness needed. I don't know why this just popped in my head, but I remember on my way home from school, sometimes you stop at the store and you get yourself a little snack. And, when I was a kid, you had $1 or $2, you could get like a pop and a bag of chips, or, maybe some candy or something like that. And the smallest bag of chips at the time, they were a quarter. And it's about 8 chips in the bag. They're really not giving you much for a quarter. Now, I would be so shocked by the people who would say, can I have some of your chips? It's only 8. It's the small, and I'm exaggerating. It was 8.
There's so much air in those bags.
It's all
right?
air.
You think it's gonna be a ton of chips. There's no.
I'm gonna give you a quarter to go get your own quarter bag. Take 5 of my, one of my 5 chips, and then you give them 1 chip, and they're like, can I have more? It's like, it's 5 chips in this bag. I can't share 5 chips. You went to the store, you got whatever you wanted to have, but you're asking me for my chips. So, I of course I would give people the chips. That's just, that's just what I was thinking on the inside. I would give you the chip, but in the inside, I was brewing like, what kind of person asked? And then next day I was probably asking for somebody chips the next day. But
pay it forward.
yeah. But I think about how sometimes we have limited resources and we're asking people, hey, give me your stuff. And it's like, can I afford to give it to you? Do I have it to offer? Is this a place where I can give it and still be okay myself? Sometimes that's our chips. Sometimes that's our time. Sometimes that's our energy. Sometimes that's listening to other people's problems. Sometimes that could be, whether or not I want to go to your stuff. It's do I have the energy? Can I afford to do this and still be okay?
Yeah.
You mentioned this, and this takes us into our next question. Because I think you bring up a really good point. Like, how do I know if I have that ability, if I have that energy? The next question was, how do we know if we need a boundary? Are there red flags? And you mentioned the acid reflux, which just, I've got a lot of acid reflux going on. So now I'm questioning everything in my life. But I'm wondering if you
I
have
did throw out
specific.
acid reflux. Oh
Yeah.
God. Let me take that one back. Let me take back acid reflux. Just take a Tums.
I do need a Tums.
I think anxiety is a really big one. We really have made an unhealthy practice of not paying attention to when we feel anxious about an interaction or a person. We push through. We're like, you know what? I have to do this with this person. It's unreasonable for me to not like this person. It's unreasonable for me to feel this way about this thing they did. So we experience anxiety, we experience frustration, we experience sometimes depression. We don't even want to be around people. We feel powerless to change anything in those relationships. Sometimes with boundary issues, we start to have some personality issues. You think about, dependent personality, borderline personality, paranoid personality. Those are all, things where there are some boundary challenges. Histrionic too. I didn't even think about. Oh yes, that one. We don't see that so much, but yes, I'm going down a clinical rabbit hole here. Fun things to Google. But we start to see some mental health stuff, and mental health is not always severe. Anxiety is not always severe enough that we need to be diagnosed or we need to take medication for it, but it can be severe enough that maybe we need to have a conversation with someone about how they're violating our boundaries, because every time we engage with them, we feel this level of anxiety.
Yes.
Also, I will say that we know that stress shows up in our body. When I have clients, sometimes, especially when they're new clients and they come in and I see eczema all over their hands or arms, and I ask them about like a correlation to flare-ups, and because eczema can be, it can flare up with stress. So I think as a therapist, we have to notice the whole person. How is your sleep? How is your skin? Are you having any headaches? Are you having any racing hearts? I now have, this little, I don't want to plug this because I'm not, but I have this thing where it tells you your heart rate and stuff. And baby, when I get stressed, it'd be like, your heart rate was, I'm like, you know what? I thought I was just secretly handling this well. But every time this little apparatus, it tells me, no, this was a highly stressful day to you. That conversation you had, it wore you out. Go take a nap. It's like, you need a nap now, basically. It's like, rest today.
But
because yesterday you were very stressed. Like,
take a break. I don't know what apparatus you're using, but it sounds incredible.
It's the Aura Ring.
Yeah.
Aura Ring.
But I say over the holidays, I was staying with my in-laws, and in-laws are hard. Families are hard. Holidays are hard, right? And I get this notice from my Apple Watch. It's like, I'm sensing that you're inactive, but you have an elevated heart rate. And I'm sitting at the table talking with everyone. And I was like, I need to walk away for a minute, because if my watch is telling me, or the ring is telling me, or we have these instruments, maybe we should listen to them a little bit, especially I'm not doing any physical activity. I'm talking to people and my heart rate is going up. That's probably some good information for me to know.
The next step in technology should be set a boundary, walk outside.
Yeah, it's not just this ring. It is also the Apple Watch. It is also whatever the Android equivalent is. There are so many tools now that we can have that monitor our stress level. I think you can even wear like a stress meter. Someone was saying from their doctor they had a stress meter. So there are so many ways to really see. Like, if you really want some information about how much people are bothering you, wear your little stress monitor. You'd be like, oh my gosh, I am above average whenever I talk to my mama. And it looks like I'm having a heart attack when I talk to my cousin. So you just, every time my coworker walks past, I'm in the 80s. I just go from
shoot right up.
All the way up.
Right up. It's just like, Maybe that'll be the new boundary predictor.
Yes.
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 I think that's it. Okay. Well, so then here's a great question because it goes into this. How do I do this when you're so anxious, when you're too anxious to set a boundary out of fear of how they'll react? Right. So not only does my anxiety go up, my heart rate go up when I'm dealing with this person, but then I even think about setting the boundary and I am so elevated.
Yeah. You know, it practice makes it better. You know, there is no easy way to have a hard conversation. And I think that's the tool we're looking for. I want to make it easier for me to say this hard thing. Well, it's a hard thing. I think you make your life easier by saying it. But it's not going to be easy to say because people have a reaction. I had a situation recently where I was telling someone I didn't want to have a relationship with them. And I knew that would hurt their feelings. I knew it would. But it was the truth. I don't want a relationship. There is no easy way to say that. There is no, I tried the physical boundary of, creating some more distance, maybe I tried a whole bunch of boundaries. Everything in the book I tried. I mean, from chapter 1 to the chapter's not even there. I tried all the things. And then it got to a point where I said, I just don't want the relationship. And that was very hard to say, and a person doesn't accept it. And it sounds very mean, but my stress levels were very high. This was a relationship that, I tried to repair. I tried to, offer different things, and it just wasn't working. And it was very, very hard to say that. And it's also a relief, having said it. It's such a relief. When we end stuff, when we quit the job, when, we break up with someone sometimes, when we, ending a relationship, when we break up with someone sometimes, quitting the job, deciding not to, get another degree or, whatever those things are that you leave, they are all hard decisions. Some harder than others, right? Some more impactful than others. Some would just directly impact you and some impact other people. But if we only get one life, which I'm still at the point where I think we only get one life, I don't think we get multiples. We only get one life. I would like to utilize this time that I have to live in the best way possible as I see fit in this moment. I love a whole lot of peace. Like, I want my life to be like 90% peace, like 90%. So if anything disturbs that, chaos, confusion, I'm about 1% for it. I don't even want the other 9 to not be. It's like about what. Now, there were times in my life where I was like at a 60. I was at a 50. But, at this phase, it's like I'm looking at what's possible. I'm looking at what has worked. I'm looking at what I know to be true. And so some things just aren't salvageable. And that's really hard to accept. It's not improving. It's not getting better. What I often see is things get worse. It's like, things will get worse. That little crack in your windshield, that baby spreads. It doesn't get better. It's not like the crack goes back. Like, you know what? I'm going to retreat. I'm going to retreat.
I'll take care of this for you.
Yeah, I'm going to take care of this because you need to see out of your driver's side. It's like, no. It's like, no, it's going to get worse. And it's going to get worse on the most important day of your life. You're like,
yes.
You're like, you know what? It's this rainstorm. Here comes the bigger crack. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh my
dripping
gosh.
on your dashboard at that point.
Yes.
I hear this all the time from new parents that it's like, oh, my parents have never had a boundary in my life, but it's gotten so bad since I've had a kid. I'm like, well, did you think it was going to get better? right?
Mhm.
Like, did you think let's bring in this thing? And life has stresses, right? Children, life stage transitions, different things happening. Most people aren't going to be like, oh man, without any conversation. Oh, I realized this thing that I was doing wasn't benefiting everyone. So I'll completely change now. Usually it takes us saying something that kind of sucks to say.
Yeah. I think with I know what happens with parenting. Grandparents have an expectation on what grandparenting will look like.
Mm,
And parents have an expectation of what parenting will look like. I don't think sometimes they consider the grandparents, but they have an idea of what that should look like. And now you're bringing these parties together and they're like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be like this for me. And you're like, well, it's my kid and it's going to be like this for me. And so
mhm.
there is like a lot of conflict in those situations. And I do think it requires some conversations. Maybe starting, as soon as you know you're pregnant, like setting some expectations so they have a little runway to, hey, when a baby arrives, we don't want, anyone outside of immediate family or
Mhm.
whatever those things are. So saying those things. What I find is people will not necessarily like those things. And that creates a lot of bitterness, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like, oh my God, you're not letting me do whatever I want to do with your child, which is interesting.
Yeah. Yes. It is interesting.
um, but also it's room for conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
We can have conversation.
I have to tell you this list somebody wrote in because I think this is fascinating with what we're talking about. So this person wrote in and said, "My mom never forgave me for the boundaries I set around when my son was born during COVID. Now
Mhm.
my sister has a baby and has no boundaries. I know what I did was right for my family at the time, but now I'm struggling with the jealousy over the relationship that my sister has with my mom."
Mm.
The complexity around it, right? That like this person can genuinely say, I know that it was the right thing, and still I have all these other complicated feelings around it.
I don't know if that's an answer to a question as much as it is a calling to
Mm,
deal with the feeling of being jealous and hopefully to not allow the jealousy to permeate those other relationships. Perhaps to go back to the table and have a new conversation with your mother around what your needs are now. We're out of, you could say, hey, we're out of the pandemic, and this is what I would like to see with myself or with my child or whatever those things are. So, now it's time to renegotiate some of the terms that were previously set. And, your mom has an option on whether she wants to do that or not. Maybe she says, well, I don't, maybe I don't want to do that. But I think there is room for a new conversation. And jealousy is such a normal feeling that I would love for us to get more comfortable with feeling it and not acting on it. Be jealous of them and go love on your niece or nephew. Be jealous of them and call your sister and ask her about her day and what's going on. Be jealous and talk to your mother. Be jealous and love on your baby and your family. It's a feeling. It's
Yeah.
like sadness. It's like happiness. Sometimes we are sad the entire day, and sometimes we're
yeah.
just sad for a moment. Sometimes we're just, happy for a little bit. So it's a feeling. It's not it's not one that we want to have,
Right.
Mm,
but it's a feeling and it's okay. It sounds like you know the why of it. And it's very normal. We will always be jealous about something. I have to, sometimes watch my online shopping with that their jealousy. Because I will see somebody with something and I'm like, I'm like, white bag with holes in it. Let me Google
Yeah.
this. I'm like, I want that bag. And then I have to talk, Nedra, let her bag was lovely. It was great. It was awesome. And you don't need it. You don't need it. Let her have a nice thing without you thinking that you also need the nice thing.
All right. My in-laws comment on my toddler's weight. How do I tell them off politely?
Tell them off. Well, I don't teach cussing classes or cussing people out and telling people off classes, but I have been known for a good read. No. You know, I think that is a statement. Please, refrain from making any comments about my toddler's weight. Please don't say that. We don't want to body shame a toddler, and that's away from the toddler, right? You have that conversation privately, one-on-one with your parents, and you ask them to not engage in that behavior. When they're doing it in the moment, you can correct it in the moment, and you say, oh, that wasn't kind to say, or like you would maybe say to anyone, take your parents out of this. Take your parents out of this. Your parents are people. They're people. When a person is saying something about your child's body, what would you say to the person?
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Don't say that. Please don't say that anymore. That's unkind. Or whatever it is. Whatever you would say is really what you say, even if it's your parents. And I think having that conversation apart for them is really important too. With body stuff, it's just so personal to the person. It's so personal. Or even, I'm a Black woman, of course. I don't know why I said that, but anyways.
Well, maybe someone's just listening. They don't know.
No. But I was going to say I'm a Black woman, and sometimes there is this colorism, right? Where it's like light skin, dark skin, brown skin. And when people have that issue of saying something in a derogatory way about a person with a different complexion or a person with a different body, it's typically personal. It's not, that's how they may feel about themselves, or they've had some teasing around this, or they've had, and so when you're saying that, it's like, it's not a psychology moment. I'm not here to break down, what your possible issue with weight or color or hair or whatever these things are could be. I'm simply here to say, don't say it to my kids. Now, you can take your issues and you can go troubleshoot them with a therapist. You can go read a book, or you can do nothing. Doesn't matter. Do not say these things to my child. Because we don't want them to then have this story, and then they're telling other. The cycle repeats because the cycle is repeating. So someone has to hop in there and say, no, not here.
And
say something.
Say something. And I love that, because it isn't your job, right, to break down the reasons why that person is saying those things to you, but for you to be able to say, you can't say those things.
Simply just don't say that.
Well, I think that's one of the confusions some people come when it comes to boundaries. Like, everyone feels like they need to explain everything all the time, right? Well, we don't body shame in this household, and here's the reasons why, right? And then they're given facts and figures of eating disorders and body issues, as opposed to, that isn't our job always to educate other people in all these ways. Sometimes our job is to just say no.
I used to work at the hospital with teenagers who were going through psychological crisis or psychiatric crises. And one of the things I remember in a random training, it had nothing to do with my job, but they were talking about how in hospitals, they tried to make all reading material appropriate for fifth graders, because people don't read and understand medical lingo, right? So you want to say to a person, take these 2 pills, one in the morning, one in the evening. It's not always necessary they take one in the morning or the evening. They could take it at 12 o'clock or 3 o'clock, But the more direct you are with the person, the higher the likelihood. Now, on here, on the bottle, they're not going to write on there, hey, take these 2 pills, because if you take them at this time, you have a higher likelihood of adhering to actually taking 2 pills. We've over communicated.
Yes.
The person has missed the whole point of
Yep.
take these 2 pills, morning, evening.
Mhm.
That's the whole thing.
Right.
Now, if you want to dig a little deeper and you want to say to your doctor, well, why in the morning and evening? That's great. If you want to ask more questions, that's wonderful. But do we always need these thorough responses and examples? I think we do that because we want people to validate and come to our side of understanding, right? So if you say, in this household, we don't body shame because body shaming is this and da da da, we're trying to persuade this person to maybe adopt this thinking in their life.
Yeah.
I'm trying to persuade you. Guess what I'm trying to do? Don't say it to my kid.
Mhm.
That's it.
Yes.
I'm not trying to make you follow any body positive people on
Right.
Yeah.
social media. I'm not trying to make you embrace your body and wear a bathing suit if you feel uncomfortable. Don't talk to my kid like that.
Yeah.
Now, if you want more information about that, we can have a conversation. But the simple thing is, let's not talk to a child about that because it's inappropriate.
Yeah.
If you are speaking to a person who is inquisitive, they have the capacity to understand, that might be a separate conversation where you say, hey, you know, I said this earlier because. Now, many of us know some fools, and you can go down this whole path of this persuasive speech, and they gonna come down the path with their persuasive speech. That's not body shaming, and you know, and it's like, oh, why did we do this? We know our people. We know which people can handle more information and which people want to argue.
Yes.
So choose when you want to share more and when you're like, don't do that.
Oof. It's a great point. Like, right? Like, what's the point of why I'm saying this? And if it's to convince other people of everything, that just kind of sounds exhausting.
Exhausting.
Yeah. I think about, you know, the things that we do with little children. You know, you think about kindergarten classroom rules. Don't hit, don't kick, don't speak out of turn, don't yell, don't this. Now, we could go into further explanation of those things, but all of that just means the class needs to pay attention. Everybody needs to sit alongside each other, you know, all of these things. We don't have to do the long hand of the rule. The shorthand works just fine. Don't hit. It works just
That's
fine.
it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Don't hit people because it's not nice and they might hit you back because you could, but don't hit is a wonderful rule. I mean, it's been working for generations in kindergarten classrooms, you know. Don't run. You know, it's like, that's a great rule.
Yeah.
You know, it's not, don't run because you may trip down the hall and bust your teeth out. It's like, don't run. Just don't run.
Yeah.
In any space, don't run.
Yeah. In general, just
don't run.
No running.
Well, I have a 4-year-old. I have a 4-year-old, and this year at school they started doing classroom jobs, and I love the teacher because here's what she does. Right, so if your job is the door holder, they have a song, and it's hold, and hold. And if your job is to clean the table, it's wipe, and wipe, and it's one word for every job, no matter what job they had. My daughter would come home, she would sing her one word, push, and push. And I was like, oh, makes so much sense to me, right? So then I started doing in the mornings, because it was so freaking hard to leave the house with a 4-year-old, a leave, and a leave. And what do you know? We walked to the door.
You know what? I'm going to start advocating for a push on doors. And a pull on doors.
Yes.
Because I'm still at the door pushing the pull.
Yes.
I need comma, push, comma,
Comma,
push,
comma.
comma, push, comma,
Like
push.
3 times in a
Right,
row, right?
3
Like they have a
times.
song, 1 word in a song. I think that's great. We need a jingle.
I think we should do,
Yes.
and I think we should do the jingle with just like our business tasks, you know, like
Oh yeah.
payroll,
Notes,
payroll,
notes, notes,
payroll.
and a notes. Notes, 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 and a notes, notes, notes.
Our whole business model is going to change.
CEs and a CEEs.
Listen,
Right?
we've maturity has tricked us into thinking that these foundational skills no longer work. We're above them.
Yeah.
We're above the don't run. It's like, no, I need an explanation. Like,
Mhm.
don't run, just push, pull. Just don't say that to my kid. Don't. It's just like, that's it.
That's
It works.
That's
It works.
Well,
Wow.
and I think that goes back to wrap it up, which is that's about finding peace, right? The simplicity of not need to fight with everyone and not need to do this, but to simply do the push and pull. I think that goes to finding peace. And you can learn more about that in one of my favorite books, which is Set Boundaries, Find Peace. Put a commercial in the middle. We can obviously keep you here forever, but we have to go to our final segment, which we do with every guest, which is calling BS, where we call some bullshit in your field. And so with you here today, will you call some BS for us?
Call some BS.
Maybe be things people say about boundaries, your job, anything. Myth busting.
That's tough because I think, oh gosh, what is it? I don't know. That's a tough one for me. I wonder why it's so tough. I think I'm not trying to say anything bad. Here's the thing that I think is interesting. I think there are so many things that overlap. And then when this new concept comes out, like whether it's like CBT, CPT, CBTP, or whatever, I'm just making up acronyms now, that it's like this new thing. And then you look and it's like, it's kind of the same as
somebody rebranded it. They rebranded.
They
got new PR.
Yeah, they got a new logo. So that is always interesting to me and a little funny. Like, oh wow, this is
the same. We say that all the time.
Yeah. Oh, coaching therapy. Oh, solution focused too. Right. So I would say that like there are all of these like spin-offs of, maybe 10, 15 things, I don't know, but just all of this retitled stuff that I think is really interesting.
Yes.
Well, as you know, they make you put a title.
Yes.
Nedra, we cannot thank you for being here today, for giving this incredible information. You're iconic. But oh man, just like a Whitney Houston, let's bring it all back together. Wow. How can people find you? How can they listen to you? You have to buy her amazing books. How can people locate you?
Yes, I have a website, nedratawwab.com. All of my stuff is there.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Easy.
There you go. And you have a practice as well.
I do. Kaleidoscope Counseling. It's here in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a group practice, so there are other therapists if you're looking for therapy in North Carolina.
Perfect. So North Carolina listeners, you now know exactly where to go. Kaleidoscope, amazing name. Thank you for being here today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We always ask you to rate, review, subscribe, follow an Apple Podcast. You can listen to us at ShrinkChicks, follow us at the therapy group, meet with one of our amazing clinicians as well. And don't forget that to grow yourself, you got to know yourself. See you next week on ShrinkChicks.